I think we're seeing that already with those strong words that the sheriff spoke. And I was more than happy to push them out there because it truly bothers me how nobody seems to want to address the elephant in the room, and we're tiptoeing around the real issue when it comes to all of this again and again. And these future generations of ours are really going to pay the consequences if we don't try to set the record straight. So I do want to actually acknowledge those who are here, whether you're retired law enforcement, current or veteran. If you'd be willing to stand or just wave, can we recognize your service? Please, you guys, I know, come on, stand up. Come on, stand up. God bless you guys, thank you. That's honestly why Bob and I have been at this now for a couple of years, just to say thank you to all these community heroes, and truly I apologize on being a member of the media. I feel like the media is very responsible for this disaster we seem to be in. It's always nice to be in Wisconsin where common sense is in fact common. That's not the case where we live on the other side of the river, it seems, so God bless Wisconsin. But we've had, the sheriff talked about this with Katie, but there's been 8 first responders now in total in just this region that have lost their lives in a year's time. That's what this has turned into. And the book project started for me, just backing up a bit. I was a member of corporate media for nearly 15 years, working at WCCO as a reporter and anchor, and was sort of canceled through the George Floyd incident, being married to Big Bad Bob, the union president of the Minneapolis Police Department at the time. But I was more bothered as a journalist how we were withholding so much information from the public on this case. And you could kind of see the wheels come off very early on with this very dangerous and divisive narrative that everybody was willing to peddle when the facts were not there. And journalists are supposed to care about facts at the end of the day, and it seemed like that wasn't happening in this case. And so that's how their lying came to be, because I just began screaming, "They're lying." For months on end, if not more than a year. And the way I was able to cope a bit was to work on this book project, not even knowing if anybody would eventually read it, but I just felt like, there's something I can do. Maybe I'll be able to sleep at night if I just put this out there. Kind of self-published the book, very little expectations. I thought my parents would be supportive and buy about 10 copies. But it became an Amazon bestseller for several months, which was remarkable. And which also went to show, restored my faith in humanity a bit, that people still care about the truth. I think for a while I was sort of questioning if that was even the case anymore. And if you're an Amazon bestseller, it just basically means you sort of rank in the top of your categories, which again is amazing for this little reporter from Minneapolis to even have an impact. And I think the book gave the courage to some folks to come forward for the first time on camera. So we decided to put out the documentary kind of in follow-up of the book. We wanted to crowdfund the documentary to make it available for free, so as many people would see it as possible. I think it's probably the world's cheapest documentary, to be quite honest. I was buying groceries for the crew at Costco, and we cut a lot of corners, but I knew the content was there and that the truth really needed to be told, and more people would consume a documentary than read a book. There is quite more in the book, I should say, than the documentary, but I knew we needed to hear from those voices. I was so bothered how nobody seemed to even want to go back and talk to these officers, the officers in prison, the officers who were forced from the Minneapolis Police Department. That was a department of nearly 900 officers at the beginning of May of 2020 that has dwindled to barely 500 current day. In fact, there's only 425 body cameras even issued at this moment to Minneapolis police officers, so those are working cops. Not only that, but their policies have been completely obliterated. They were rewritten almost weekly after the George Floyd incident. Something as simple as handcuffing a suspect after a crime, you have to now call a supervisor to get permission to do so because it's considered a use of force. They don't chase suspects anymore. I know I'm talking cop talk a little bit, but I think these are also things that the media just refuses to report on, and it's really crippled the profession, especially in Minneapolis. And then, of course, we've seen a lot of these policies adopted in other places as well, as activists have taken over police departments. And that's what I think people need to push back against. So just talking a bit more about Minneapolis. I've yet to find anyone who thinks that Minneapolis is better off now. We were told we'd be living on the right side of history after all of this, right? And yet to find anyone who actually thinks so. In fact, carjackings never even used to be reported in Minneapolis. They never even tracked them in 2019 because there was no reason to. Now there are hundreds that happen every year. In fact, I think they say a car is stolen in Minneapolis now, at least one every 20 hours, I believe it's on average. So it's just this rampant crime, and then you see these so-called leaders that just seem to point the finger at each other. So nothing seems to be changing, sadly. So again, we put out the documentary. The goal was to put it out before Thanksgiving to ruin as many Thanksgivings as possible. Just a lot of family fighting, like, hey, we want to watch this documentary. Not only that, but then we ruined Christmas for some people as well, I heard. But nearly 8 million people have now watched The Fall of Minneapolis. I think we're all looking at it. Corporate media has yet to report on it at all. I know you guys are shocked. But that's really part of the problem in our society now also. There's this line in the sand, it seems, that people seem to be fine with pushing propaganda and whatnot. And then there's, sort of this other side, and then everybody seems to be fighting, and I just don't think we're really getting anywhere as a result of all of this. But at the end of the day, we really need to acknowledge truth and care about that because there is power in that. Certainly there was unintended consequences from the documentary. If you followed the story at all, it's 9 days after we put out The Fall of Minneapolis that Derek Chauvin was stabbed 22 times in prison. Oh, no. He was serving his time in Tucson at a federal facility there. No incidents at all. Was working every day, kind of described as the model prisoner by people who work there, and he's nearly killed the day after Thanksgiving. He has nerve damage after what happened to him. As I said, stabbed 22 times, and stabbed by a former FBI agent. Who just had a few years left of his sentence to serve. A few years left. FBI informant. I apologize. If anybody's in the FBI, don't be mad. Former FBI informant. Thank you. Words do matter. I apologize. Still very, very scary, and he's now back in the medical unit. He's still not allowed any of his access to his materials. He has yet to receive them back after this attack in the law library that day. And his family has been allowed to see him since. But they even were struck at just how badly he's doing physically, trying to recover from this. The U.S. Supreme Court denied his appeal. That was about 4 days after we put out the documentary. That appeal was based on the change of venue argument. Why in the heck would you allow this trial to take place just a couple miles from the worst riots in U.S. history? But Judge Cahill ultimately made that decision. So there are a couple other appeals moving forward now. Perhaps some more news will come out of that soon. We keep people up to date on the case on alphanews.org if you don't follow us there. I hope you will. But I think it really just shows the evil. This, to me, everybody gets wrapped around with this political fight, but this is truly a matter of evil. Right and wrong, I believe in all of that. And that's why I think we need to be a little more loud. Too many of us have stayed quiet, I think, for a little too long. So that's just a bit of an update on how Derek is doing. The other officers, they pled guilty after seeing what happened in Chauvin's trial. They thought, well, we're not even going to get a fair trial. And many of them, they were facing 10 or 15 years themselves if they were found guilty. So they went ahead and took this plea deal. But think about these two rookie cops specifically. You have Thomas Lane and Alex King on the job for 2 and 3 days as Minneapolis police officers. They will be lifelong felons now as a result of following their training on the scene that day. So again, when I talk about right and wrong and good and evil, that's really, I think, how you can look at this. Not only that, but look at all of the cases that have happened since with Kim Potter in Hennepin County. You had Brian Cummings, who's a canine officer for the Minneapolis Police Department. He was involved in a chase, a fatal chase, someone who shouldn't have been driving. Also was part of his training as he went ahead and was chasing a carjacker. Mary Moriarty charged the cop and dropped the charges against the person he was chasing. He lost his license for 10 years. He's not a police officer any longer and just got out of the workhouse. You have Trooper Ryan Laundegren. It's a case you've been following. He was charged with murder after the traffic stop of Ricky Cobb. And we're seeing, I think, a lot more people speaking up on behalf of that case. I know that the sheriff has wanted to do so. But again, you have someone who followed his training, and you see all this manipulation happening behind the scenes. A lot of that was there with the George Floyd incident. But again, I think people are now, willing to kind of say this is, enough is enough. So elections have consequences. Don't let this happen in Wisconsin, you guys. That's, you have power to do that. But I want to leave some time for questions. How many people, if I can ask, have seen The Fall of Minneapolis? You can see it again tonight if you haven't. Okay, well. How many people have read the book? If I can, far fewer. See, you guys, free documentaries. This is a great business plan, You can spread the message more. But no, thank you very much for doing that. And don't be afraid. I think, too many of us are afraid sometimes to engage in these uncomfortable conversations. That's why I applaud the sheriff. I'm like, thank God it's taken somebody from Wisconsin to say what these Minnesota guys should have been saying for years. And it can't come from Bob because, his last name starts with a K, so he's in the Klan. I mean, this is how insane it got with him. Of course, for white supremacists, it's just completely insane what they do to you. But thank God somebody's willing to, at the end of the day, names really don't hurt all that much. And that's really what it was for me. And maybe you guys can relate to this as well. People will say, why did you want to come forward, or why would you, put this target on you? And I am so afraid if we don't. That's what will keep me up at night. That's what scares the crap out of me. We have to somehow get back to the good guys being the good guys, the bad guys being the bad guys, and get back to law and order. So that's kind of my goal. I don't think I could ever be a cop, so this is my way of trying to